Well, let's talk first of all. What year did you retire?
I retired on March 1st, 1979. Actually, February 28th, yeah.
And prior to that, between the war and retiring, you mentioned.
Yeah, I went back to, I did several tours, different tours. I went back to became Ops Officer of BA 42 Training Squadron. I served on Cardiff 6 as Electronic Warfare Officer on the staff of Cardiff 6 with, well, three admirals, Admiral Baldwin, Admiral Holloway, and who's the other one? Yeah. Okay. And then I also did a joint tour down at MacDill Air Force Base as Electronic Warfare Officer for the what's called then the Readiness Command, which handled all the joint training throughout the United States of all three services. And I enjoyed that very much. It was great. I partook in a lot of Army maneuvers, and there were only 6 naval officers and 240 Army and about 180 Air Force officers on the on the staff, so I was in a distinct minority. But anyway, it was fun. I enjoyed that. And then I finished up my tour as a Fleet Intelligence Center, Europe Atlantic in Norfolk. And that was a great tour also because I was as I said, the PSYOPs planning officer. I had 6 kids working for me, and we planned all the PSYOP targets and missions for the A6s, not the A6s, for the whole fleet, 6th Fleet. And then and 2nd Fleet. And then I had to go to twice a year to what they call deconfliction conferences. And so took in all the B-52s and everybody else who were delivering nuclear weapons should a nuclear holocaust break out, trying to get coordination between the dropping of the bomb so you wouldn't wipe each other out with a nuclear weapon. And that was interesting. And I thought about that for a while, and I looked at it and I said, I brought up the subject at these joint meetings. I said, what about electronic magnetic interference, EMI? He said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, hey, atomic weapons throw off a lot of electronic radiation, and that's going to interfere with your electronics on board the aircraft. And they kind of sat back and thought, and they said, we never even thought about that. So I said, okay. So I went to Pax River, and they did tests on an A7 and found out that's the way it is. So we had to start including that on the deconfliction quota. And I retired out of there, and you were at the retirement. Admiral Hayes was at Sinclair at the time, found out I was retiring, and said, this guy's going to retire in style. So he did. I had the Sinclair band playing there. It was open to, I had probably about 100 guests coming. And Ron Hayes spoke at my retirement. It was a full-blown formal retirement ceremony. I was piped over the side. It was quite an event. I was very, very proud of that. I was also awarded the Navy Commendation Medal in there.
What is the Navy? What is that?
Navy Commendation Medal is just as it says. It's a commendation for work that you've done, usually non-combat. But I got 2 of those medals for combat work. And what they do is put a V for valor on the ribbon and on the medal, on the ribbon of the medal, just to indicate that. So I got 4 of those. I got 2 for valor and 2 for work that I had done. So I wound up pretty well off. I got a Silver Star, 7 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 22 Air Medals, 4 Navy Commendation Medals, and a Joint Service Commendation Medal for my work down at the Joint Command in Tampa. And the Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry, 2nd class. So yeah, most everybody got pretty good decorations over there.
Yeah, well, you earned them. So as a general kind of philosophical question, how did the Navy or the war service, how did that kind of change your life, your view on life?
I'm not sure it did that much. I'll be honest with you. I enjoyed combat, and I was doing what I had been training to do for so long, and then come back and train the rest of the kids who had not been in combat for what to do in combat was certainly a very, very rewarding experience. As far as it changed me, I never had PTSD or anything such as that. But yeah, I think maybe, and you well know this, Doug, but I maybe was a little bit quick to jump to conclusions, and maybe I got angry with you guys for maybe not any reason, but anyway, there were some changes, but I think they've all worked out. I've settled down, I've accepted everything, and it wasn't any big thing, I don't think.
Well,
Yeah.
no, and you know, I know, you know, Mom had to deal with a lot while you
Well,
were gone.
good God, poor Jan. It was, yeah, she had to take care of 3 boys, all born within 3 years. And God knows she had her hands full, and God bless her. She was a Navy wife, and she was a true military wife, and she just took care of everything. And she did so well. And I'll tell you what, one of the things, I don't know if you were aware of this, Doug, but one of the things that occurred was I had made a mission that got national attention, and it was brought up on Good Morning America. Lieutenant Ted Bean and Commander Ron Hayes did this, and there was a lot of newspapers that carried the article on it throughout the country. I got hundreds of letters as a result of it. But the bad thing was the anti-war activists were just as bad then as they are now. Took to calling Jan, and with threatening calls. And, you know, I hope your husband dies. You deserve it. You deserve everything you get. I hope you get killed. I mean, just absolute horrible things that they were saying to her. To the point where the Navy finally, for about 2 weeks, had to send out a security detail to guard the house. I don't know if you remember that or not. But
I do not remember. But I think this kind of leads me into another question, like, you know, the kind of community among Navy aviators and their families.
yeah.
And how that was probably a support system for Mom.
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. The naval aviation community is a very tight community. And she received, and we all supported each other. When I got back and the war was still going on, I was CACO, or Casualty Assistant Calls Officer, to two widows. And we helped them survive and get along, and you know who they were. And then we all did that sort of thing. And the wives all supported each other very well. There was very little pettiness. You had people who didn't like each other, but they still pitched in to help. So yeah.
So talk a little bit about, like, the bonds you've created with your fellow aviators.
Oh my God. There's nothing like the bond you create in a 2-man crew, sitting side by side and doing this stuff. Ron Hayes and I remained very close until his death. And then other people I flew with, Bill Westerman, Earl Wolfgang, Phil Shannon, all those guys. We remained pretty close. And squadron mates, when you're on a cruise and you're doing most of your work as a group in the ready room, and that's the only place you have to go on the ship for communal or communications. You become very close. Your squadron mates are very close. They look out for each other, and there's rivalries. Yes, there is, but and there's some intense rivalries, and some that didn't work out so good. You're going to get that every time anyway. But it was just a good 20, 21 years that I spent in the Navy.
I know, growing up, all of your friends and our friends were Navy
Absolutely.
aviators.
Yeah. I am a lot closer. I have a couple friends out of college that I communicate with once in a while. They're both, well, not anymore. They're both gone now. But that was it as far as college was concerned. My ties were all Navy. And all my friends now are, for the most part, retired naval aviators that I knew and worked with. And of course, after you retire, I worked in Navy contracting for a long while. And I was also very active in the Association of Naval Aviation, which did a lot of work with Congress in trying to further the Navy's interests. I did a lot of work with Tailhook. Well, I was a member of Tailhook. And a lot of military communities such as that.
And did you found the Intruder Association?
Yes, I did. The Intruder Association, yeah. When they finally retired the Intruder in '97, it was in the fall of '97. And when the last flight took off out of Oceana, we had kind of a party for it. And they opened up a Hangar 500 for us. And then the two airplanes, the last two airplanes, A6s at Oceana, were taking off to go out to Davis Mountain, the boneyard. Well, there were about 300 or 400 people in the hangar. And they manned up the aircraft right in front of us. And it was raining, low, overcast. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, almost dark as midnight. It was that bad. And they manned up in the aircraft and then taxied down to the end of the runway, and the runway paralleled the hangar. So when they came down the runway in this driving downpour, overcast, low overcast, and they were taking off at formation takeoff, and as they were rolling down the runway, you could see the rooster tail water being thrown up behind the wheels. And then as they broke ground, they just kind of flew off and flew into the clouds, and they were gone. That was the last of the A6 at Oceana. A very fitting way to go away. And so I asked around, I said, we can't just let this die. For all the times, and then, so J.B. Dadson and a couple others have talked about it, so I formed the association. I wrote up the mission statement and had incorporated as a tax-free organization. I've forgotten the designation for that now.
501(c)(3).
Yeah, 501(c)(3), yeah. And sent out I published a couple newsletters. I printed them up myself, 4-page newsletters, and wrote most of the articles in them. I got some contributing. I got about 3 of those out in about a year. And I was able to garner about 600 members. And then finally, after 3 years, I said, hey guys, I need, who wants to take over? The silence was deafening. So I kept at it until I finally talked Bill Schultz, a Grumman rep, into relieving me of it. And he went on farther with it, and then Roop Owens took over, and then Bill Yarm, and it now is about 2,200 strong. We have annual scholarships that we give out to dependents or children of A6 people, grandchildren and so on. most of them grandchildren now, I guess. But and then it's quite an active organization, one I'm very proud of joining, having.
I think we're kind of wrapping up here, but you know, if you can picture someone, a young person going to look at this video online, what would you like them to take from it?
Oh boy.
I know that's a heavy question.
Nothing more than what I would like my sons and every other son, or sons and daughters actually, to take with them. Just do what you can and do it the best that you can, and just roll with the punches and keep going.
That's all you can do. So,
I know it sounds trite, but
was there anything that you wanted to talk about as I wrap up here, or anything I missed, or?
I don't know. We pretty well covered in the brevity allowed. We pretty well covered everything that was involved with this. There are a couple more missions I could talk about, but this, you have that stuff.
Yeah, that's good. Well, thank you for participating, and we'll get it up there.
All right, Doug. Thank you.
Okay.